As soon as I entered my husband's family house, I realized I was the outsider. Of course, no one stated it directly. However, it was in the looks. The way that when I entered a room, the talk slowed down. His mother seemed to be attempting to hide the fact that she couldn't stand me by smiling a bit too thinly. There was something poisonous in the air, more like smoke, but not loud or noticeable. It held on to everything, including the meals, the quiet, and the phony praise. Everly is my name. My age is 34. I work as an accountant for a small software business and reside in the suburbs outside of Boston. Stable, although not particularly glamorous. Oliver and I first crossed paths in graduate school. He was endearing in that quiet way that gives you the impression that you've at last discovered someone you can trust. After 2 years, we were married. He seemed like the type of man who would protect me from the outside world if necessary. I was unaware that the world from which I would require protection began at his family's immaculately maintained home. Helen, his mother, was the type of woman who adhered to traditional values, but I soon discovered that this was simply a euphemism for controlling everything, not trusting anyone, and never forgiving a woman who didn't follow your rules. I could tell she didn't like me from the first time we shook hands. She rejected me, not just disapproved of me. Julia and Candace, Oliver's two sisters, were only her younger siblings. Blonde and cold, they always wore outfits that suggested they were going to a country club, even if it was only for brunch. I was always on the outside, smiling politely, without knowing what they were laughing about, while they talked in inside jokes and private memories. I initially told myself to wait. I attended every event with alcohol, tried creating a pumpkin pie using Helen's recipe. I even chuckled at their dull tales of ski vacations and deceased relatives who I had never met. I believed that if I worked hard, I would be seated at the table. However, some people prefer that you remain little rather than blend in. Helen, too? She had a knack for making you feel inadequate all the time. After dinner, she would give me a stack of dishes and say, in a gentle voice, "You're so good with your hands. Must be all that budget cooking you've done growing up." Knives were the words. Early on, I told Oliver once, like I was making it up, he simply blinked at me. "You're overanalyzing it," he remarked. "They simply require time." That was the first year. By year 4, I had stopped talking about it. I never received an invitation to join the family group chat. They never once considered including me in their plans for weekend getaways to Vermont or candlelit birthday dinners for Oliver's father, who, incidentally, I had never met because he passed away before I was born. Only when pictures appeared on Facebook with captions like "family is everything" would I learn about it. It was an inexplicable form of loneliness, like to being a ghost at your own wedding, only that the ceremony never ends. I stayed, nevertheless, since I cherished Oliver, because I was always hopeful that things will change, because I'm the type of person who finds it difficult to give up. Right up to Christmas this year, it was a slow-motion implosion rather than a single instant. I left work early, the week before Christmas, and drove by Helen's house. The vehicles of Candace and Julia were parked in the driveway. Strangely, nobody had brought up a get-together. I assumed it was merely a spontaneous visit. We had keys, so I assumed it was still normal to enter without knocking. I entered a private gift exchange that was well underway. Wine was present, laughter, a pile of cashmere scarves and Sephora bags. As Julia laughed about a spa package, Helen opened a cookbook that was encased in leather. When I walked in, they all froze. I got that tight-lipped smile from Candace. "Oh, you arrive home early. We simply intended to give you a call." Helen didn't even raise her head. Just a couple modest presents. Not much. I remained silent as I stood there in my rumpled work clothes, gazing at the ribbons glimmer and the warmth in their eyes that I had never experienced. Oliver was also present, occupying the sofa, staring at his phone as if he didn't care about all of this. However, I didn't blow up. I refrained from crying. I made Helen's pumpkin pie when I got home. Once more, because I had hope. God, I detest that section. Then Christmas Day arrived, the actual meeting, the large family meal. Helen's home has the appearance of a holiday magazine. candlelight bouncing off crystal glassware, a huge tree covered in ornaments, and the aroma of cooked butter and cinnamon surrounded you as soon as you entered. Oliver was laughing as he poured wine for his mother in the kitchen, and I was standing behind him. He was completely unaware of my presence. Dinner began. The long, ornate table. At the head, Helen looked like the queen she had always seen herself as. They all pretended that this was the Norman Rockwell painting they had always desired while chatting and joking. As usual, I sat at the far end. Helen clapped her hands as if she were going to bestow a regal blessing on us just as dessert was ready to be served. She smiled as she replied, "I have a little surprise." Before the pie is eaten, one by one, she started removing big red present bags from behind her chair. Everyone has a name. Candace, Julia, Oliver. $500 for a purse? A spa gift card? Months ago, Oliver mentioned a rare whiskey in passing. She was aware of their desires. She paid attention. She recalled. There were no more bags after that. No present for me. Not a card. Not a joke. Not a phony apology either. Nothing but quiet. Helen gave me a lovely smile and murmured, "Oh, dear. Everly, I guess I forgot about you." They all chuckled. Oliver, too. My spouse. I'm not sure what changed within me at that precise time. Perhaps the years of silent humiliation finally got to them. It might have been the wine. Perhaps it was realizing that Helen smirked and that she did it deliberately. I grinned, be calm, chilly. With my eyes fixed on hers, I remarked, "Good thing I didn't forget about you." There was silence at the table. She blinked. "What does that mean to you? You'll see." And I reached inside my handbag and took out a small silver box, a red ribbon, fold cleanly, no tag. Slowly, I gave it to her. "Happy Christmas." And I noticed something different in her eyes for the first time in 6 years. Not disdain, not arrogance. But be afraid. She was still unsure of the reason. However, she would. Yes, she would. Slowly, she opened the box, as if she believed I had accidentally placed a spider inside, or a blast of glitter, something juvenile, something trivial. However, I'm not petty. No more. There was a USB drive inside. Easy. Silver. Not very fancy. She gave it a bewildered blink, before turning to face me, as if she was torn between sneering and laughing. "What is this?" Her tone was more inquisitive than irritated as she asked. I simply grinned. "Probably something you ought to look at." As soon as possible, the atmosphere shifted, like someone knocking over a candle and nobody noticing the flame licking up the curtain yet. It's subtle but sharp. Julia and Candace looked at each other. Oliver felt a change but was too out of sync to recognize it, so he leaned forward until someone gave him a graphic with bullet points. He never fully comprehended anything. With a tight little laugh, Helen put the drive down next to her wine glass. "Everly, I'm not sure what you're attempting to accomplish." "Not attempting," I cut in, "just giving back the favor." Then I got to my feet. It wasn't dinner time yet. No pie had been offered. A narrative about her personal trainer was still being told by Candace. However, I was finished. I was stuffed, full of their chilly generosity, their disdain, their smugness. I left, and I didn't turn around for the first time in 6 years. I get your question. What was on the USB? Okay. Figures, receipts. Copies of erroneous financial transfers. Helen's name appeared on credit card statements linked to accounts that weren't hers. Costs incurred by the corporation that were unrelated to the business. The gifts of real estate moved between family trusts and sham companies. How did I obtain it? I work as an accountant. When you marry into a family like that, you quickly discover that their filthy laundry is hidden in tax returns and spreadsheets rather than in the laundry room. In memory of her late husband, Helen managed a modest family foundation, purportedly for charitable donations. Despite the years-long financial losses at that foundation, she managed to maintain her lavish trips, seasonal house renovations, and the presents she gave out like a king or queen. Not only was it unethical, it was illegal. Every breadcrumb was mine, too, because I cleaned up her records for years, filed taxes because she was too lazy to do it herself, balanced novels that were unclear to her. All of it was available to me. I also saved receipts. Not that I was going to utilize them. However, I always knew that she would eventually cross a line that I couldn't ignore. What about Christmas Day? The line was that the consequences took time to materialize. That night, she most likely didn't open the drive. Presuming I was bluffing, she probably threw it in a drawer and poured herself another glass of wine. Underestimating is what narcissists do. However, I received a call 3 days later. Not from Helen, from her attorney, an actual lawyer. His voicemail read, "Miss, we want to talk about some files you sent us over the holidays, Everly." I didn't return the call. I sent the IRS the identical files, silently, anonymously, via the appropriate routes. The originals were then erased from my HDD. I cleaned my laptop, changed email addresses. I had no intention of playing defense. I was going to be gone before they knew the game had begun. Oliver was still unable to understand. "What the hell kind of stunt was that?" he said as he returned home 2 nights after Christmas, smelling of bourbon and cigar smoke. If he read the files, I asked him. He hadn't. Naturally, he hadn't. He declared, "It's a family business." "No," I answered. "It's a criminal enterprise that you have been facilitating." He gazed at me and said, "Everly, Jesus. Are you genuinely attempting to overthrow my mother?" I remarked. "She's already done that herself. I am merely providing her with a flashlight." He slept on the couch that night. I began staying in a motel 3 days later. I had completely moved out by the end of the month. The problem with leaving someone who has never really seen you is that they don't think you'll leave. Oliver attempted the standard strategies. Shame. You're exaggerating the situation. Disgrace. Everyone believes you're exaggerating. Manipulation. She is elderly. She had no malicious intent. But because it was presented with a courteous grin, I was done ingesting poison. I discreetly filed for divorce. I don't have any lawyers. No significant announcement. Only the papers, cold and tidy. Alimony wasn't what I wanted. Didn't desire the home. All I wanted was to get out. I left the rooms where I was not liked, but tolerated. Out of the meals where I was expected to smile and given crumbs of affection. Out of the jail constructed with fictitious customs and white tables. Less than a month later, the family began to descend into chaos. A mysterious Instagram tale about snakes hiding in plain sight was shared by Candace. Julia, certain that her inheritance was at jeopardy, called Oliver in tears. Helen? She got a lawyer. Quick. They attempted to argue that the files were fake. I was accused of hacking. Claimed that I was unstable, envious, furious. One thing they were correct about. I was upset. Not spiteful. Not spiteful. I just finished acting. Furthermore, those who quit acting are the most dangerous. Oliver pleaded with me to return, despite anything. Despite the fact that his mother almost lost her foundation. Even after his sisters had made guns out of their phones. "I missed you," he said. Claimed that I was the best pie maker. Claimed that the house felt deserted. I informed him that the house had never been occupied. When I was filling it alone, he simply didn't notice. What they don't comprehend is this. They didn't dislike me, so I stayed. They taught me to despise myself, and I eventually stopped listening, so I fled. I was invisible in the world they created unless I was helpful, where I never quite measured up, where silence and service were the means by which one won love. And they believed that because I was too soft, I would never leave. Softness, however, is not weakness. Softness is self-control, and I've run out of that stuff for them. The stillness isn't the most strange aspect of leaving. Everything used to be so loud, and a lot of it was just noise that you had learned to put up with. The phony giggling, the tight smiles. When I would talk at the dinner table, they would respond with a single word. The way Helen would consistently send Oliver a monogrammed wallet on Father's Day, even if she would forget my birthday 3 years in a row. I used to believe that I was exaggerating. I now realize that I was underreacting in order to get by. I initially moved into a short-term rental. Not very fancy. Street level, 1-bedroom apartment with hardly enough room for a winter coat in the closet. It was mine, though. I purchased fresh linens. I lit candles only for myself. Instead of making a Pinterest-worthy dinner after a long day, I made scrambled eggs because I wanted to. At first, the silence seemed startling. the sort that doesn't leave you feeling alone. The type that reveals how much of your life you've been wasting, expressing regret for taking up space. I ceased to apologize. They made an attempt to pull me back in. Through her attorney, Helen sent a message alleging that I had manipulated documents to damage her reputation and that the files had been tampered with. If that didn't smell like desperation, I would chuckle. Now, her foundation was being investigated. Real, but quiet. It turns out that I wasn't the only one who thought the money trail didn't seem right. My suggestion was a match dropped into a parched forest, not a cry into nothingness. She could feel the heat. After that, Oliver sent me a single email. "We need to talk" is the subject line. The message's body? Everything didn't have to be destroyed. For a long time, I gazed at that phrase. Then I answered in a few 5 words. "You allowed them to ruin me." He didn't answer. I realized he was gone at that very instant. Not really gone, but gone in the sense that someone disappears while still in front of you. The most depressing aspect? He probably never really saw me. Not once. Starting afresh in your mid-30s without anyone cheering you on has a certain beauty and terror. Not a single milestone post. No proud of you, rants in family group chats. No dinners for celebrations. Just be quiet and labor and discovering your identity again without the commotion. I began writing in my journal. Not for show, not poetry, only unprocessed entries. For example, I didn't recoil when someone knocked on my door today. I didn't feel repulsed today, even though I spent the entire day in sweatpants. I didn't see a ghost when I looked in the mirror today. Being a better version of myself was not my goal. All I was attempting to do was identify myself. I received a note from Candace one day. It was unreal. In the 6 years that I had been her sister-in-law, she had never been in touch with me directly. Then all of a sudden, she began DMing me like if we were old friends. "Hey, I am aware that a lot happened. However, I just wanted to express that I wish our relationship had been different." How is it different? For example, do you wish I hadn't discovered your mother's pyramid scheme? Or do you wish I had smiled more when I was excluded from family pictures? I didn't respond, because I was aware of that message. Not regret, not regret. Control of damage. I'm not missed by them. They miss having authority over me. Around that time, I began going to a therapist. At first, it seemed cliched, as if you did it because it was the socially acceptable thing to do following a major life event. However, she had little interest in chit-chat. She posed the sort of queries that cling to you for days, similar to, "When was the last time you felt more than just needed wanted? In your opinion, what does love look like when it isn't connected to performance? Are you familiar with the sensation of safety in your body?" I had no responses. However, I continued to appear. Not because I was in need of repair. However, I was tired of acting as though I wasn't broken in some ways. By spring, I had secured a new position in contract accounting for a tiny nonprofit organization located 2 towns away. It was a comfortable office. There was coffee that tasted like burnt hope and individuals who said, "Good morning," as if they meant it, but no marble countertops or executive dining room. I nearly broke down when my manager gave me a praise on the formatting of my spreadsheet. It wasn't because it was dramatic. However, it had been a long time since anyone had taken note of my good work. That kind of approval used to be something I yearned for. It seemed like sunlight now, but I couldn't remember how to open the window. They continue to discuss me. I know this because I received a screenshot from a Facebook conversation from a mutual acquaintance. It was one of those messages that Helen loves to use as a nebulous weapon. "Let's pray for strength in difficult times." Julia wrote beneath it, "Some people only want to see other people burn." It's funny, so I'm not going to see them burn. Even though the dirt I'm rebuilding on has been salted, something green is still growing. And they are frightened by that. I don't share this tale in an attempt to win people over. I say this because I wish someone had told me that it's acceptable to leave when family just likes the limited version of you. I wish someone had explained to me that survival does not equate to treachery, that establishing limits does not equate to cruelty. Saying, "This doesn't work for me," and walking away, even if your voice trembles, is sometimes the most radical thing you can do, particularly if it trembles. It's odd how healing doesn't look like what you had in mind. I thought it would be theatrical, like a scene from Hollywood where I would yell, hurl plates, and storm out with a suitcase and a middle finger. However, that is not how it occurred. Rather, the first silently folded laundry, his name was removed from my list of emergency contacts. When someone said family, I stopped flinching, and I brewed coffee the way I liked it: strong, too bitter, and sugar-free. That was it. The revolution was that. On the top floor of a house that had been transformed, I rented a little apartment. No elevator, drafty windows, and slanted ceilings. However, I termed it a dining room because it had a skylight over the bed and just enough room for myself and a cheap folding table. I would watch the sky change through the window every morning when I woke up, gray at times, brilliant blue at others. But always be truthful. It never made an effort to control me. I was never asked to shrink. I purchased plants. I let them to perish. I then purchased additional items. Sometimes you just have to try again, notwithstanding your doubts about its effectiveness. The work became more stable. I began receiving invitations to weekly strategy meetings from my employer, a woman named Marta. She didn't have to, because she had faith in my intellect, because she took note of the patterns I observed, the details I captured, and the subtle ways I improved efficiency. "You're the type of person who fixes things without being asked," she once said. It was more intense than I anticipated, because I had been mending things for 6 years without anyone noticing or, worse, taking credit for them. Right now, I was spotted, not as ornamentation, not as a stand-in wife, simply me. I didn't go on any dates. Not initially. I didn't want to run the risk of mistakenly associating safety with familiarity once more, not because I was resentful. In actuality, Oliver never struck me. He didn't ever shout. I was never called names. However, he let them to, in silence, with justifications. They didn't mean it like that. It's not a big deal, and just let it go. He and others like him keep their hands clean by feigning neutrality rather than complicity through their silence. I required time to recollect the experience of being selected, not accepted, not solely defended in private, publicly, clearly, and proudly chosen. Months later, I ran into a woman I dimly remembered from college one evening. Hannah was her name. Despite being on the same university, we had never been close. However, she recognized me from a downtown bookstore. We had coffee. After that, dinner. Next, brunch. She showed kindness without expecting anything in return. She inquired about my job, my fave tunes, my worst tendencies. I told her that I sobbed at dog ads and that I preferred solitude over socializing, but she didn't bat an eye. There was nothing serious about us. Not quite yet. Perhaps never. However, she made me chuckle, and that was more important than I thought. Then Julia suddenly sent me an email. No subject line. Just a brief note: "You prevailed. I hope you're content." That was it. I looked at it for a while. Not because it was painful. It didn't. It was depressing. Because they genuinely believed that winning was the goal. It seemed as though I had planned a massive plot of retaliation and was now perched on a throne composed of their damaged reputations. They were unable to comprehend. I had no desire for vengeance. Peace was what I desired. Furthermore, you cannot find peace with those who want you to remain unhappy in order to feel better about yourselves. I received a letter a week later, an actual one. My name was written in Helen's clean, stiff script on a cream-colored, handwritten, stamped envelope. Before I opened my hallway, I stood there for 5 minutes. There was only one page within. Don't apologize. No recognition of her actions. One sentence only: "I knew you weren't one of us all along." I chuckled, out loud, sharp, from deep into my chest. Because I agreed with her for the first time. I was not among them. I wasn't. And I'm grateful for that. I retained the letter. As a reminder, not out of sentimentality, that occasionally, people will despise you for enduring what they attempted to destroy. Because it reminds them that they made the decision to remain ill, they will be resentful of your recovery. They will refer to your absence as revenge, your boundaries as bitterness, and your serenity as pride. Permit them. To those who have never shown you grace, You owe no clarification. Later on in the month, I purchased a tiny wooden box, lined with velvet. Nothing fancy, just straightforward and authentic. I inserted the letter. And a picture of me, alone, without Oliver. Only me. I'm smiling on my apartment porch with my hair disheveled, coffee in hand, sun in my eyes, and no makeup. I now have that box on my shelf, a snapshot of the life I left behind. Evidence that I didn't bring the smoke with me when I left the fire. The peace thing? It is silent, not really dramatic, not a movie. In the third act, it doesn't show up like a hero. It manifests itself in little ways, such as a full breath in the morning, an unearned grin, or silence that seems liberating rather than punishing. Now, I reside there, not angry, not with resentment, but in the room where I can finally hear my own voice clearly. Helen's letter was never answered by me. How would I have responded? I appreciate you verifying what I already knew. She desired the final say. Give it to her. Because I've discovered that people like her are incapable of coping with their lack of relevance. Reactions, not outcomes, are where their power lies. They starve the instant you stop giving them attention. I've also silently allowed her to go hungry. 6 months ago, Oliver and I finalized our divorce. No attorneys. Don't fight. It was just a clinical, icy signature on a paper that signaled the conclusion of something that never really began. In court, he appeared worn out, older. People who have dedicated their entire lives to maintaining peace by denying the truth become hollow. He extended his hand to shake mine as we exited the building. I stopped. I shook it after that. Not because he was worthy. However, I did. Because I had to have the final gesture. What I did with the remaining materials was never disclosed to him. He still has no idea how much I discovered or how far I could have carried it. I had the option to pull them all into the light, in public, lawfully. Destroyed the family name they had been using as a weapon for many years. However, I didn't, as I didn't require a conflict. All I needed was a way out. And as they made fun of me behind wine glasses, I silently constructed one brick at a time. I was gone by the time they realized. I no longer check in on them. No stalking on Facebook. No mutual rumors. Those who never created room for me in their lives have no interest in the next chapter. That was the end of the narrative. Not a single door slammed. It simply ceased to be my entrance. My life is quieter now. However, it's fuller. Even if I only have toast and apples for dinner, I still make it myself. I furnish my house with items that are straightforward and don't have to be spectacular. I say no more frequently. Only when it seems like alignment, not obligation, do I answer yes. I noticed a small wooden sign next to the register when I entered a store a few weeks ago. It stated, "Some ladies are afraid of fire. Others turn into it." I purchased it. Not that I required the quotation, but because I was afraid of becoming anything for years. I believed that if I became very assertive, loud, or much, I would alienate others. As it happens, the proper people are not pushed. They either clear out or stand next to you. It's clarity, either way. I still talk to Hannah. It can be light at times, such as silly memes or pictures of our depressing lunch from that day. Grief, family matters, and the strange scar trauma left even after it's over can make things heavier at times. She makes no effort to correct me. She merely pays attention. And I had no idea how uncommon it is to find someone who simply accepts you without changing who you are. We are not formally together, but perhaps that's all right. Perhaps not all tales have a happy ending. Perhaps some tales conclude with self-love at last. I'll leave you with this then. It's not because you're small that you feel small in a room. It's because they've constructed barriers that are too strong to contain your reality. If they dismiss you and say you're overreacting, if they chuckle while you're hurt, if they only be nice when it suits them, you're not insane. You have just awoken. And perhaps there aren't any fireworks at that moment. Perhaps it's a continuous, low murmur that says, "You are deserving of attention. You are worthy of feeling secure. You are not required to remain." I didn't set the family on fire. I didn't ruin their reputation. I simply let go. And in doing so, I discovered mine at last.